Private messages have surfaced, and what they reveal is far more calculated than anyone expected. Aston Martin isn't just building for 2026, they're building a plan to dismantle Red Bull at its core. At the heart of it? A strategic move to target the one person Max Verstappen trusts more than anyone on the pit wall, his race engineer. But this goes far beyond a simple defection. Because these leaked chats suggest something else, not just a job offer, but a systematic campaign to extract intelligence, one conversation at a time. And if it's true, then Red Bull's 2026 dominance may not collapse from the outside. It may fall from within. Red Bull, as expected, has remained publicly silent. No statement, no confirmation, no denial. But behind closed doors, that silence has begun to fracture. The conversations that have recently leaked aren't just speculative, they are specific, time-stamped, and alarmingly intimate. What started as internal chatter has now escalated into an open secret inside the paddock. Aston Martin has been in direct contact with one of Red Bull's most sensitive assets, a senior engineer embedded deep inside Verstappen's raceday structure. And while the FIA remains hands-off for now, the paddock is already bracing for something much more destabilizing than a typical staff move. The official narrative remains incomplete by design. Red Bull has always operated with a veil of secrecy, but this leak changes the tone entirely. This isn't about a contract negotiation. This is about intent. The messages suggest early-stage planning, but with unusually specific operational language that matches Red Bull's own internal systems and workflows. For a rival team to even reference this level of detail implies two things: access and understanding. Someone inside Red Bull didn't just talk. They outlined. They mapped. They shared. From Aston Martin's side, the reaction has been quietly dismissive. They're not denying the contact, just downplaying its significance. But that subtle avoidance is telling. This is the same team that, just months ago, claimed it was not ready to fight for titles yet. Suddenly, they're poaching one of the most race-critical minds in the championship-winning garage? The timing doesn't match the public narrative. Unless, of course, that narrative was never true to begin with. Unless Aston Martin has been building its 2026 war room far more aggressively than anyone suspected. What's especially suspicious is the absence of the engineer himself. Normally vocal during race weeks and debriefs, his presence has faded over the last few events. Media interactions? Cut short. Strategy meetings? Attended remotely or missed entirely. Red Bull claims he's managing workload, but internally, that excuse isn't holding. The race team is now operating with unusual procedural stiffness, almost as if it's protecting itself from within. The leak didn't just reveal communications, it revealed a shift in behavior, and that kind of change only happens when something very real is underway. The chats themselves don't mention Verstappen by name, but they don't need to. The context is unmistakable. Mentions of driver calibration preferences, throttle mapping iterations, and communication latency under pressure all align with known quirks of Max's driving profile. Aston Martin isn't just targeting an engineer. They're attempting to reverse engineer Red Bull's raceday DNA. They want the rhythms, the instincts, the unspoken protocols. The things that make Verstappen not just fast but impossible to unsettle. And this raises a deeper, more unsettling question. If these chats have only now come to light, how long has this operation been running? Because that's what it is, an operation. It's too structured, too specific to be opportunistic. The phrasing, the focus on interpersonal trust, the absence of digital fingerprints, it all points to something that's been building in the background for months, maybe longer. If Aston Martin has played this well, the moment of contact wasn't the start. It was the final phase of a process designed to flip Red Bull's strength into a weakness. And finally, there's Verstappen himself. The one person who hasn't spoken, tweeted, or hinted at anything. But for those watching closely, his radio demeanor has subtly shifted. Less relaxed. More clipped. More mechanical. It's the kind of change that happens when something you relied on is no longer guaranteed. Whether he knows the full truth or just senses it doesn't matter. The bond between a driver and his engineer isn't contractual, it's emotional. And if Aston Martin has found a way to fracture that from the outside, Red Bull's real problem isn't the leak. It's the silence that follows it. The leak revealed messages that weren't just casual chatter, they were detailed, structured, and alarming. They mapped out schedules, responsibilities, and even strategic touchpoints for Max Verstappen's race engineer. The way Aston Martin framed their outreach suggested careful planning, rather than opportunistic recruitment. Every line hinted at an understanding of Red Bull's inner workings, the kind of insight that can't be gleaned from telemetry alone. For rival teams, this wasn't just a tip-off. It was a warning that someone was already inside the system thinking 2 steps ahead. What's most striking is the specificity of the chats. They referenced not just general responsibilities, but nuanced operational knowledge, things like Verstappen's preferred feedback cadence, the timing of setup adjustments during pit stops, and the way his engine mapping is interpreted in real time. This wasn't high-level theory. It was practical, actionable intelligence. Aston Martin was clearly attempting to acquire not only talent but the mental link between driver and car that has kept Red Bull at the forefront. For an outsider, the line between recruitment and strategic extraction begins to blur. The channels themselves were discrete encrypted messaging platforms, off-schedule calls, and unlogged meeting spaces. No official HR memos. No contracts yet. But that doesn't diminish the potential impact. By initiating these early discussions quietly, Aston Martin could cultivate loyalty and trust before Red Bull even realized the extent of the engagement. It's a move that's as much psychological as it is operational, designed to destabilize one of the most finely tuned teams in Formula One without firing a single shot on track. Internal Red Bull sources reportedly noticed the subtle anomalies before the leak became public. Small shifts in meeting attendance, delays in key feedback reports, and unusual delegation of tasks hinted that someone inside was being pulled in two directions. While these signals could be explained away as routine scheduling quirks, combined with the leaked chats, they painted a much darker picture. Aston Martin wasn't just hiring, they were targeting critical operational knowledge that is usually sacrosanct within Red Bull. The implications go far beyond the engineer himself. Losing someone in that role doesn't simply shift a workload, it affects communication flows, driver confidence, and decision-making speed during a race. Every split-second call made by Verstappen relies on precise calibration between driver input and engineering interpretation. The leak implies that Aston Martin is aware of how to replicate or preempt that relationship. In other words, they're not just stealing knowledge, they're trying to neutralize a competitive edge that exists in human synchronization, not just technical specs. Moreover, the timing couldn't be more consequential. Red Bull is deep into 2026 development, integrating a new hybrid engine and advanced telemetry systems. A departure or distraction at this stage could ripple through both car performance and team morale. Aston Martin's approach appears meticulously calculated to coincide with these high-stakes phases, suggesting that this isn't a gamble, it's a long-term strategy designed to weaken Red Bull before the next championship cycle begins. Finally, there's an element of invisibility in this leak. Nothing has been confirmed publicly. Max Verstappen hasn't commented. Red Bull continues to operate at peak efficiency, at least outwardly. But the mere existence of these chats, combined with subtle internal anomalies, has already started reshaping the mental map of the paddock. Teams are watching, competitors are calculating, and the FIA is silently observing. Aston Martin may not have made its move fully yet, but the signal sent by these leaks alone could already be changing the balance of power in Formula One. The twist in this situation isn't simply that Aston Martin is targeting Verstappen's engineer, it's how they're leveraging it. Sources indicate this move is part of a broader, coordinated strategy to systematically erode Red Bull's dominance. By securing a key operational mind, Aston Martin could gain insight into not just driver-engineer interactions, but also into Red Bull's developmental philosophy, pit strategy algorithms, and real-time race adaptation protocols. The leak implies that Aston Martin isn't just hiring talent, they're acquiring the operational blueprint of a championship-winning team. Even more concerning is the timing. Red Bull is deep into the integration of its 2026 power unit, a program that requires absolute cohesion among engineers and drivers. The engineer in question is central to translating Verstappen's feedback into actionable adjustments. If Aston Martin successfully removes this link, it could cause subtle but cumulative disruptions to Red Bull's workflow, creating delays and miscommunications that competitors can exploit. This isn't an immediate collapse, it's a slow, strategic weakening from within. The implications extend beyond Red Bull alone. Industry insiders suggest Aston Martin may be coordinating quietly with other rivals, sharing intelligence and insights derived from the engineer's potential transition. While this isn't overt collusion, it represents an informal alliance, multiple teams benefiting indirectly from destabilizing the benchmark organization in the sport. If true, the leak isn't just a personnel story, it's a catalyst for a reshaping of competitive balance in Formula One. The psychological dimension is equally significant. Verstappen has built trust with this engineer over years, creating an unspoken understanding that governs split-second decisions on track. If that bond is compromised, Red Bull doesn't just lose a technical resource, they lose the human link that turns mechanical data into performance. The engineer isn't a cog in a machine, he's part of a living system that allows Verstappen to consistently outperform competitors under intense pressure. Aston Martin targeting him is effectively an attack on that system itself. This twist also introduces uncertainty into Red Bull's future planning. Teams plan development cycles around key personnel and their unique skill sets. If the engineer were to leave, or even if rumors force Red Bull to adjust internal responsibilities defensively, it could cascade through the team, affecting 2026 car design, race preparation, and even strategic decision-making. Competitors might not need to build a better car, they just need to wait for internal friction to appear in Red Bull's ranks. Additionally, the leak hints at preemptive positioning. Aston Martin's approach appears meticulously calculated, focusing on influence rather than instant results. By gaining insight into Red Bull's processes before the 2026 season even begins, Aston Martin could align its car development, staffing, and strategy to counter Red Bull at every step. In effect, they are not reacting to Red Bull's dominance, they are predicting it, and shaping the environment to mitigate it before it manifests. Finally, the overarching tension lies in what Red Bull can and cannot do. Contracts and loyalty may slow a transition, but they cannot entirely prevent the loss of tacit knowledge, the kind that exists in real-time judgment calls and decision-making under pressure. If the engineer exits, Red Bull loses more than a technical mind, they lose a bridge between instinct and execution. This leak, therefore, isn't merely news. It's a warning that the next phase of Formula may first be won or lost before a single car even hits the track.